I'll turn up anywhere where the group is called the People of the Book. Anywhere, anytime. I am so happy to be here tonight. Truly. It's amazing. It is truly amazing to think that there are 1,000 people in this room. Rabbi Lipner and, of course, Jenna and Adam for pulling together tonight. Rabbi Lipner talk about the power of one and one idea that, as you say, started 5 years ago, and now here we are with 1,000 people. This event and the team and everything you've created, it is nothing short of inspiring for someone like me to think that 1,000 talented, curious, committed young Canadians who happen to be Jewish are sitting in this room with minds wide open. And a quick thank you, even though you're not here, Ellis. Ellis invited me to be here tonight. And if you know Ellis, he's the kind of guy you would never want to say no to, because he only says yes to helping all the time. So thank you, Ellis, and I hope the message gets to you. The power of one, and I'm told I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to speak really quickly because I have so much I want to share with you. The power of one. I love this theme. I love this theme mostly because I believe hugely in the power of a positive one. One kind and uplifting word, one idea, one person, one bold ambition, one crazy great dream, and how such power can make a single life, the life of a family, the life of a community, the life of a country, and the life of the world a better place. Let's talk about a few people who had a few bright ideas. Think for a moment about Theodore Herzl. Not the Theodore Herzl we read about at school and we think of when we see this picture. Think of a young Theodore Herzl, deep in thought at his desk, as he sat writing what eventually would appear in 1896 as the Judenstaat, or the Jewish state. What an outlandish idea. A state for the Jewish people. Imagine the moment and the sheer out-of-the-boxness, if I can make that out, that idea. Anti-Semitism is rife across Europe. Jews, for the most part, are powerless in its face. He had no money, no land, no clout, just an idea he simply knew had to happen. Today, we take as a given the bold, proud, inventive, fierce state of Israel. But in truth, even today, we know Israel is nothing short of a miracle. But what audacity he had, what optimism, and what an outcome. The power of one. Or how about Einstein? Maybe some of you, like me, have been riveted to the new biography that's currently showing on TV. After all his education and with all his obvious erudition and passion, he couldn't get a job in his beloved field. He was marginalized and humiliated by the academic elites whose hubris and arrogance just roiled against him because he refused to simply accept their conventional wisdom. Abandoned in his quest for positive reinforcement, even by his friends, who kept blaming his orneriness for his lack of success. And in the end, forced to take a job as a clerk. I mean, we would hate to take a job as a clerk. Imagine having Einstein's brain and being relegated to being a clerk in a post office. Can you imagine anything worse? But he was not to be stopped. This unstoppable force became the defining physicist of the 20th century and perhaps the greatest physicist of all time. Or how about this man, Elie Wiesel? One humble, empathic, determined man who defied the truly undefiable odds, and he forced the world to bear witness. His inner scars must have been excruciating, but he never wavered from his commitment to use every ounce of energy and intelligence within him to inspire others toward a more just and a more humane world. He gave us Night, along with so many books. But Night, one of the greatest books of all time, will remind us and generations to come forever of what he experienced. The power of one. And of course, there's the odd non-Jewish person around. who we might want to refer to. Think of Malala, a young 8-year-old Malala, a child threatened at every turn, but one who just knew in her heart that girls had a right to education, that young people deserved to have a voice, that she had one, and that if she used hers, maybe others would do the same. She took and continues to take steps so brave, she has already inspired millions, and of course, is the youngest ever to win a Nobel Prize. And can you believe she's still not 20? I believe, based on the very ideas that set her off on her brave journey, she will one day change the narrative of an entire nation. The power of one. I've had a few experiences of my own with the power of one. Let me share one tonight. It was 2010. I was sitting in my study at about 10 o'clock at night, and I read a story on CNN about an Iranian woman who was going to be stoned to death, wrapped in white sheets, put into a sand pile in the ground, and stoned to death because she had dared to have a relationship with a man who wasn't her husband. Now, it wasn't like she was married. Her husband, after abusing her, had run off with someone else. She was out in the streets, and 8 years later, she did meet somebody. And because of that, she was going to be stoned to death. And I thought, I can't go to bed. I just can't this time do nothing. So I called a good friend of mine, Louise Dennis, who's an editor over at Random House, and I said, have you read this story? And she said, yes. And I said, we need to do something. And that night, we put up a petition to Laranjani, who was at that time the Minister of Justice of Iran. And I can only tell you can read more about the story online, but I can tell you that one day after the petition went up, we had 200 people. On the second day it was up, Lorraine Harper called to say, would I mind if she put her name up? By the third day, we had 50,000 people who had their names up. And within 3 weeks, 1 million people signed the petition. And I can tell you, Sakyana Ashtiani is alive today. But guess what? The power of one is only rarely about big ideas or little ideas that turn into big ideas. It is so much more about the day-to-day decisions to just be a mensch, to show empathy, to touch the mind and heart and soul of one person. And nowhere and no one can tell this story better than Drew Dudley. Some of you may have heard Drew Dudley speak. This is Drew Dudley at a Toronto TEDx. He can tell his story best, but essentially, his story is about a young woman who really was on the brink at a moment in her life when she just couldn't see how to put one foot in front of the other. He gave her a lollipop, and he changed her life. I encourage you, go to TED, put in Drew Dudley, and listen to his story, because it is that kind of story of the power of one that can really have impact on all of us. Like a lot of people, I've been wondering a lot lately, how is it that such a great, great nation as America could have this man at its helm? What has happened? What has happened to the power of positive ideas, to the notion of honesty, to the ambition to make the world better, to the idea that others count more than ourselves? Empathy. What has happened there? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen here? Which brings me to my real message. Each of us has power. Way more power than we know. The question is, what will we do in small and perhaps even bigger ways? How will we embrace our power to make a difference? To lift ourselves up? To still the voices inside of doubt? to deflect naysayers, to stand up for right when we have a chance, to be empathic, to reach, to dream, to dare to fail, to believe deeply that making even one person feel better on a bad day can really be life-changing. This entire evening has as its core Jewish values. I can think of no better connection than between those values that we take such pride in and the theme tonight, the power of one. Of each of you embracing these values and your own power to make the world a better place. So go for it. Thank you.